It's time we revitalize the ancient art of the mixtape. A mixtape is a compilation of songs that you want to share with a significant person. You might decorate the cover with little pictures or stickers. You might give the mix a catchy title to indicate its relevance. You might even leave the tape somewhere clever to be discovered at the end of a scavenger hunt. Excuse me while I vomit sugar cubes. In this case, the significant person is you, out there listening in internet land. My mixtape is not necessarily a compilation of songs, but media of all types. And what's the occasion? I don't know, I feel like doing a regular episode this week. So sit back and enjoy Media Mixtape Meltdown. Let's begin this series with something I'm rather fond of. Today's theme is 2D animation. What is it about the cell-by-cell process that has so much magic to it? It's one of the most expensive and difficult art forms out there. Just imagine a billion-page flip book. Spine on that thing would crack a walnut. Now when you think of the most respected animation studio in existence, what name comes to mind? Disney? Well, they're hit or miss nowadays, but since you're all a bunch of nerds, you'll probably say Studio Ghibli. Well, the first animated feature on my mix is cited as a big inspiration to Hayao Miyazaki and Isao Takahata of Studio Ghibli. The film is La Royale is on the bottom of the screen, roughly translated as The King and the Mockingbird. Production of this film began in 1948 as The Shepherdess and the Chimney Sweep, based on the Hans Christian Andersen tale. It was to be France's big cinematic hullabaloo, but the breakup between director Paul Grimaud and producer André Serra delayed the project. The final version of the film, renamed The King and the Bird, premiered a few years later. In 1980. 30 years. Civilizations have risen and fallen in that amount of time. Just think of all the things that happened between 1948 and 1980. The moon landing, the hippie movement, video games, the Human Genome Project, that barking cat video. Such a different world. All the more reason this film is timeless. And it truly is timeless, harkening back to classic French animation, but also borrowing from Looney Tunes and Disney. The King and the Mockingbird looks and feels like 30 years of animation. Just gaze upon this. All that time paid off, like a fine wine fermenting in a cellar. Ah, Carlo Rossi, you get better with age. The plot involves a cross-eyed king, aloof to the real world and despised by his subjects. But most of all, he is despised by the titular mockingbird who lost his beloved during one of the king's hunts.
Parfaitement, je le dis et je le maintiens. Ah, ça. Et j'ajoute même, tu es un vilain coco. Parfaitement, un vilain coco.
Is that French enough for you? Then the movie decides it's actually about these doe-eyed paintings, a shepherdess and a chimney sweep. Hence the original title. The king's portrait gets jealous though, so a chase through Mont Saint-Minas-Tirith ensues with the help of Mr. Mockingbird. There are parts where you'll notice that the animation changes. For instance, when the chimney sweep finds himself in the lion's den, the lions jump between cartoony Disney characters and line-heavy abstractions. It's a bit distracting to see such stark contrast in style. This film is considered a French masterpiece, so check it out. It's also got a giant robot. Enjoy that, you nerds. There's a public domain translation titled The Fantastic Adventures of Mr. Wonderbird because people only watch things in the public domain if it has a stupid title. The next item on my playlist comes from the world's leader in animation, Latvia. That's according to the Latvian guy who works at my grocery store. He may have been exaggerating, but I am not exaggerating the awesomeness of this next series. Let me introduce you to, dear God, that's a frightening creature. Fantadrums, also known as a bunch of Cyrillic crap I can't be bothered to pronounce. Immediately I'll tell you the problem I have with this series. I don't really know what's going on, but I'll tell you what, it is a lot of fun to watch. As far as I can figure, the series involves a child cosmonaut and his demonic space cat, which I've learned is named Indrix 13. Whenever a distress call is beamed throughout the galaxy, Indrix arrives to set things right. Such predicaments include nosy aliens, a baby penguin, and running out of table salt. I don't know about you, but when I run out of salt, I call the crisis hotline. It's what you do when you've been assaulted. The animation is quite different from what I'm used to, being the product of an unfamiliar culture. I've seen plenty of stop-motion animation from the Soviet states, but this kind of mainstream-looking work is a bit overlooked. A passing glance might lead you to believe that Fantadrums is some kind of third-world Pokemon ripoff. You got these brightly colored creatures brawling on futuristic backgrounds. Hell, Indrix even shrinks into this little Pokeball Pokecube. Except this came out in 1985, so I guess it would have to be the other way around. But now that I look at it, you've got an adventurous kid and his shape-shifting yellow pet. This looks a bit more like Adventure Time as directed by Mobius. May he rest in peace. There's also this great little subplot where this unicycle-riding mouse continues to flirt with the yellow space cat. Huh. The only thing not weird about that sentence is there's also a. But Indrix has his heart set upon another space cat that is actually an alien. Now that's a bizarre love triangle. Every time I see you falling, I get down on my knees and become a pencil because that's the most logical mode of transportation. So if you want something different, check out Fantadrums. It's a lot better than the unimaginative crap in this country. A sentient Brillo pad dwelling in a pineapple in the Challenger Deep? Where's the originality in that? The third track on this magical mixtape tour is a short film from 1959 titled The Little Island. And no, not Lonely Island. The film starts with 3 characters on a boat. I'm on a boat! Ah, fuck, I walked right into that one. The characters come upon a Gary Larson desert island and lay claim to the land. Over the course of the next half hour, each little sprite has an epiphany relating to their skill, religion, art, and science! But their digressions lead to a battle of mammoth proportions. Now, just look at this animation. You might think they may as well be stick figures judging on how simple the design is. But don't forget that simplicity can be highly effective. The animation in The Little Island is some of the best and most fluid I've ever seen, telling a philosophical tale without dialogue. What you may dismiss as one of those horrible Harvey tunes is actually a masterpiece of form, motion, and silent action. But who's responsible for this? None other than master animator Richard Williams. Name not ring a bell? Hey, remember that movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit? With a complex animated live-action hybrid featuring familiar characters from various studios that amounts to one of the most difficult projects ever set forth? Richard Williams was the animation director on that behemoth. But if there's one other work I'd rather mention, it's the ill-fated The Thief and the Cobbler. Williams began this project in 1964, inspired by the Arabian artwork adorning his tea set. How very British of him. In reality, this could have been the greatest animated film ever made, but over the decades, he ran out of money and the whole thing was taken over by Warner Brothers and then again by Miramax, both of which slaughtered the film. I want to know what studio head looked at this masterpiece and said, you know what this work of art needs? Matthew fucking Broderick! That'll bring the kiddies in. Today, Richard Williams prefers not to even talk about The Thief and the Cobbler, seeing as how it went. So if you want a good example of Williams' work, find a copy of the BAFTA award-winning Little Island. It'll make you jizz your pants. Well, not really. Although this final selection might. Hedgehog in the Fog. You know my problem? At a very young age, I was exposed to short animated features like this. I grew up with the knowledge that cartoons can be a legitimate art form. Cartoons weren't an escape, they were moving masterpieces. This, of course, raised the bar for what I considered to be good. One of those bar raisers was 1975's Hedgehog in the Fog. Yeah, we're back in the USSR. You don't know how lucky you are that we got the talent of Yuri Norstein to enjoy. This short tells the tale of the titular rodent setting out to visit his friend, the world's smallest bear. I don't think bear zygos are even that small. But during his journey, Slavic the Hedgehog wanders into a patch of fog, and then he's eaten by giant bugs. Fog is an inherently scary thing. Dangers lurk behind the veil in the misty unknown. While you can shatter the darkness by lighting a torch, fog cannot be so easily dispersed. The hedgehog becomes lost in the mist, constantly tormented by an owl, a dog, and an elephant. You know, one of those Eurasian elephants. This cartoon is great in creating a sense of dread and really immersing the viewer into this situation. We've all been lost before, in strange cities and alien worlds, wandering the fog in search of an exit, finding both beauty and terror in our desperate travel. From a technical standpoint, Norstein achieved the look of this film by layering glass panes on top of each other to create the illusion of depth. The characters themselves are cut from cloth, giving the world a more organic feel. It's one of the best animated shorts I've ever seen, and has become a staple in Russian animation. It even became a stamp in 1988. Ah, fuck that. We've got The Simpsons. So speaking of movies with ridiculously long production histories, in 1981, Norstein began a new project called The Overcoat, based on the story by Nikolai Gogol. It's still in production. Barely 30 minutes have been completed. The delay stems from the fact that the film requires multi-layer sets that can be moved and raised toward the camera, making the studio surface itself part of the animation. Sure gives those wimps at South Park a run for their money. CGI sellouts. That concludes this mixtape. From enchanted kingdoms to outer space, to existential island, to a journey through the fog, animated films can take you to so many places and deserve to be considered a real art form. As for computer animation and stop motion, I'll get to those in a future mixtape. For now, I'm gonna play some video games. Man, nothing compares to these old Sonic the Hedgehog games. Ah, no, don't fall in the water! I call bullshit. He can breathe in outer space just fine.